Okay, and today we're going to talk about how to harmonize a major or minor scale using 7th chords. So before we talked about how to use triads to harmonize a major or minor scale, but today we're going to add the fourth note and think of 7th chords. So what we're looking at here again is we have C, E, G, B, which makes a C major 7 chord. Okay, so we're skipping every other note of the scale, right? Now another thing that's important is to be able to understand this not just from the notes, but also understand what the scale degrees are, and you can write it that way. So C also equals the root. So we call that R for root. You could write 1, but root is kind of more direct. That way we know it's the root of the chord. Okay, so root. Then the E would be the third. So root, 3, G is the 5th, and B is the 7th. So we have the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th, which in C major, this spells out a major 7 chord, okay? So that means the first chord of the scale is going to be a major 7 chord, right? And then for D, we're going to have its own minor 7 chord and so on. So we're going to write each of those out before the C major scale. Okay, so if we take our C major scale and we start with C, the 1 chord is going to be 1 major 7. It's just like a major triad, but we're adding the 7th degree at the end. So a natural 7th, so it's a 1 major 7. Okay. Then for D, we have 2 minor 7. Okay? Because it's just like a minor triad, like the 2 chord, right? But we have a minor 7th at the end because C is the 7th of D. You go back 1 and that's C. From D all the way up to C is a minor 7th interval. Right, so we have a 2 minor 7. Same thing with E. We have a 3 minor 7. Okay? Because D, if you go back from E, D is the 7th. All right? So it's a whole step. Okay? Or you can think up from E to D is a minor 7th. That's why it's called a minor 7th chord. Okay? Because it's a minor triad with a minor 7 at the end. Okay? Then we go to F, and we have a major 7. So 4 major 7 for F. So that's our 4 chord. Okay. Now the 5 chord, as we know from before, we're going to have a dominant 7 here for the 5 chord. Major chord with a flat 7, so we have a dominant 7 here. Then our 6 chord is A, which makes a minor 7 chord also. Okay. So for the same reason as before, we got a minor triad with a flat 7 here, being the G. If A is 1, we go back, that would be 7, so we call that a flat 7. Okay. So for B, for the 7, what we're going to do is make a 7, and we're going to call this minor 7 flat 5. So the 7 chord is a minor 7 flat 5. We could also say the 7 chord is a half diminished 7. It means the same thing, it's just a different way of writing it. But very commonly you're going to see it written as minor 7 flat 5. So this is how you harmonize a major scale with all of the 7th chords. Now we can do the same thing with the minor scale. We just start from the 6th degree. So all the same things apply if you start from the 1 being the 6. So if this was 1, 2 would be this one. So that means in a minor key, the 2 chord is a minor 7 flat 5. Right? Okay, so now we're going to spell out each chord and understand which scale degrees are in each chord. So if we think of C from the top, then we call this C major 7. Okay, that's the 1 chord. D minor 7 is the 2 chord, E minor 7 is the 3 chord, F major 7 is the 4 chord, G7 is the 5 chord, A minor 7 is the 6 chord, and then B minor 7 flat 5 is the 7 chord. These are all 7 chords of C major. All right? So basically, with C, you're going to have the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. And that spells out a C major chord. Now those notes would be C, E, G, B, right? As we already talked about before, but we want to look at it differently today like this. So D minor 7 would be root, flat 3, because it's a minor chord, 5th, and flat 7, because it's a minor 7, not a major 7, so that 7th is a flat 7. All right? Now for E minor, you're going to have same thing, root, flat 3, 5th, flat 7. So just like the minor 7 chord up here, it has the same DNA. Now if I go down here, F major 7 chord, it's just like the major 7 chord up here. We have root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. Now for G7, almost the same thing, but we have a flat 7 when it comes to a dominant 7 chord. Okay, so we're going to go root, 3, 5, flat 7 for our G7 chord. Right? And A minor 7, same thing as these minor 7s, root, flat 3, 5th, flat 7. Okay. Now B minor 7 flat 5 is the same thing, but we have a flat 5th in that chord. So we're going to do root, flat 3, flat 5, and flat 7. So we know that all the notes in these chords all come from the C major scale. So there's no sharps or flats or anything. So for example, on E minor 7, the root note would be E, the flat 3 would be G, the 5th would be B, and the flat 7 would be D. Okay? So these are all the types of 7th chords that you're going to see in a major or a minor scale. Okay, so that pretty much sums up the basics of how to make 7 chords apply to a major scale or a minor scale if you start from the 6th. And basically, we just want to also know one last thought, is that even though the 1 chord is a major 7, generally we're going to think of a major 7 chord relating to the 4 chord. Okay, so if we play a 1 chord, we might choose to do a 6 chord or a 6-9 chord, but the major 7 chord is mostly associated with the 4 chord. Okay, same thing with a minor 7 chord. So for example, if you were in a minor key in A minor, you could play an A minor 7 chord as 1. However, you might choose to do a different form of that chord, like an A minor 6 or something else, because minor 7 is mostly identified with the 2 chord, or the 3 chord as well, but especially the 2 chord. Okay? Now we're going to learn later about how the modes apply to these as well. For example, the 2 chord, the Dorian scale goes with that. The 4 chord, the Lydian scale goes with that. Okay? But for right now, we just want to understand the basics of how these chords fit into a major or minor scale.